Hello there, how's it going? It's been a while for me since I've done any streamings, um, but I am back with a very special stream for me. I just recently finished The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, and this game currently replaced my all-time favorite game. Um, it has some shortcomings, um, but the whole experience and everything that the developers accomplished in this game, I find it so spectacular. And so I decided to do like a retrospective. I gathered some footage on my Nintendo Switch um, through the capture of the console itself, those 30-second clips. And I have a total of 300 hours playthrough on my first playthrough. I managed to narrow down the footage quite a bit. I'm not entirely sure how long it is, but I think it's either just under an hour or just over an hour type of thing. So I think this is kind of an interesting thing to do, compile a 300-hour playthrough retrospective into 1 hour stream type of thing. And I'm gonna be focusing mostly on like the gameplay experience. So I avoided any footage of like cutscenes, big story moments, which is one of the biggest strengths of this game. The story is much more in the front and forward in the spotlight compared to the previous one. Um, and yeah, so right from the get-go, we start um, with Link and Zelda going under Hyrule Castle, finding this expanse of like underground cave systems that lead to these ancient ruins. Uh, and this for me was already from the get-go like an awesome way to start. For those of you who did play Breath of the Wild and followed the Zelda community, for example, on YouTube the past 5 or more years, there was this hype of Zonai theories and stuff like that. And it's awesome to see the fandom getting recognition from the creators themselves. And in the sequel, the developers basically said to the fan community, "We got you guys. Your fan theories are all correct." And so the game presents you with Zelda and Link discovering these Zonai ruins that have um, a very intricate relation to the foundation of Hyrule itself. And this has this whole like ancient history, anthropology kind of lens perspective approach to the story, which I find like awesome. It really resonates with the type of fiction that I enjoy. And yeah, even like posing some like seeds for questions. Why do these ruins from civilizations that came beyond the sky find themselves here on the ground? And also engraved in these murals like depictions of ancient history and most importantly for the story, the rise of the Demon King, um, aka Ganondorf. I did a little screenshot, Dark Souls inspired. Um, and yeah, this is how the game begins. Like I think like uh, it's I really love like tone wise, even with the sound engineering and the soundtrack. It's awesome, and the story is so much more um, in the forefront, like I said. And I decided to skip the next part, which is like a tutorial that is like 2 hours, 4 hours long, maybe shorter if you sprint through it. but it's really worth it for everyone to experience for themselves. But afterwards, eventually, when we land on the surface of Hyrule, this is Lookout Landing, which is pretty much the base of operations, where you get a lot of major quests throughout the game. And it's right in front of the floating Hyrule Castle. We can see that because of story reasons, the upheaval makes it that some chasms have been opened. Like we can see here, if you jump from the surface through these chasms, it keeps going, going, going. The music changes, it lets you know this is a different environment, a different cosmos. And it's really like this line between majestic and eerie. And you immediately know this is a new area. So they added an entire underground area that mirrors the surface of Hyrule on top of the whole Sky Islands archipelago. So the gimmick is that you use a lot of contraptions to traverse vertically, horizontally, however you can. The area is so much more expanded compared to the first game. It's like triple or more the exploration. And yeah, it doesn't have like the best graphics in terms of like what the market can offer, but everything is so like visually stylistic, and the soundtrack really helps as well with the immersion. The little sound effects layering, like it's all like very minimalistic, but together or layered, like it's really nice. Yeah, and so the abilities really change how you interact dynamically with your environment, some puzzles, obviously as well with combat, quite a lot of new enemies, and even the same enemies from the previous game, some of them have some differences. This is very reminiscent of Shadow of the Colossus, which I personally love. And so for example, in this instance, it has a chest with a treasure map, a treasure that finds itself in depths. And so you find treasure chests with maps in the Sky Islands, and it points to a mark in the depths, and you lose track of what you were doing. And yeah, it's one of those games. It's quite amazing how they managed to embed so many like recipes in terms of gameplay styles into this one sandwich of game. And yeah, very important in the combat, we saw a little bit with the quick menu, is fusion. So Ultra Hand, Fusion, those are two abilities that are a game changer in how you express and interact within traversal, combat. You can attach like mushrooms, flamethrowers, skeleton hands on your weapons, and your shields as well. In this case, like I have like a puff shroom which makes a smoke, and I can go stealth and make a sneak attack, and that's a critical hit right away. And the Yiga clan are much more prominent as well. There's quite a lot of quests related to them and areas in the depths. Here I decided to show one of the first like boss battles against Master Koga, and it's interesting that their storyline kind of mirrors what you're doing. They're also trying to find uses of all this ancient technology, and by raiding their bases you can find schematics and shit. And yeah, some puzzles require you to traverse the actual map to complete. Like there's several types of quests. There's main quests, there's shrine quests, side quests, and side adventures and stuff like that. And yeah, what else do we have? Yeah, the depths. So the depths are quite expensive. They're very dark. You're gonna require, more often than not, a few resources if you want to explore them. Like here, I always make sure that I have a lot of meals readily available. And a mechanic that I really love is the bright bloom seeds, which like light up like this. And these light roots are basically the in reverse version of uh, map towers that you had in the first game. Only in this game, they are cannons that propulse you in the air. And these light roots, they basically light up the area in the depth. Like so, I believe it's gonna update the map. And also an important thing to notice, a good tip to know, is that these light roots are usually like in the same location as a shrine would be on the surface of Hyrule. And yeah, verticality-wise, the depths are very spacious. There's a lot of space in it. Some Yiga bases, like I mentioned previously, they're often like equipped with a lot of like constructions of different schematics, which is kind of cool because you get inspired for your own things as well. And yeah, it reminds me a little bit of Metal Gear Solid infiltration in the bases. You can tell by the aura from that guy that you need to get rid of him. And this enables you to unlock side of their base, so you can get the schematics and some other resources. And yeah, this was the first time I encountered, or yeah, one of the first times I encountered again one of the dragons. And like in the first game, you can get resources from them, but now they also go underground here through the chasms, and it's really like it hammers that theme of this game where the heavens meet the earth. Here I accidentally found another Yiga base through the process. And yeah, by this point, I barely did the main quest. I'm just like exploring and getting familiarized with all like the dynamics of the game. So ice, electric, that creates this effect. There's a lot of like different cave systems in the surface of Hyrule now, and this like mix of ingredients makes like the expression of gameplay so much more like diverse, like what you can do. Often one problem can have several types of solutions, and it's just like you experimenting like what works, what doesn't work. And this type of gameplay is like so much brings so much joy. And yeah, like in the first game, you collect some orbs from shrines, and you use 4 of them to either increase hearts or stamina. I personally advise stamina because it enables you to climb further and glide further and stuff, but don't underestimate hearts. Like, if you don't have the gear, hearts are good. And yeah, from here, once I got more familiarized with the game, I started doing more main quests. And what I really enjoyed is that the main quest is not just one chunk sequence of main quest. It's actually splits like into several, like 3 or 4 main quests that you can do all in parallel, and eventually they will meet up like at different sections, or on A section, on B section, C section of like the overarching story of the game. And here, Impa is traveling around Hyrule, investigating the appearance of these geoglyphs, they call. And a little visual puzzle, try to find the pond. Once you reach the pond, there'll be a tier. And these tiers have embedded in them these memories, and I'm not going to spoil any further, but like it's very important to the story, and it's beautiful. It's very similar to what they did in the first game, but I think the impact that it brings, um, culminating at the end of this game's story, is much more impactful. But yeah, so like I said, similar enemies to the game before, but with some alternate appearances, and therefore you use your new abilities to get around them, which I find like very creative. Like even the fights have like a puzzle gimmick to it, or logic to it. And the most important of these battles, I would say, is Phantom Ganon. Phantom Ganon is one of the best, like, optional overworld mini-bosses that you can find, because this boss is going to prepare you really well for the final battle, the final dungeon. This was the first time I fought Phantom Ganon, and kind of went well. And yeah, so like I said, I mentioned sky towers before, so as opposed to having to climb the towers and connect your Sheikah Slate or whatever Purap had in this game, the tower is a freaking cannon, so you get shot into the air, and this gives you the perfect vantage to just like take in the whole area. And second bonus, it gives you a good vantage point to just start from very high up and float to the nearest sky island and progress from there as well. So yeah. And yeah, the environment in the Sky Islands is like usually very serene. There are some exceptions, but I won't say why. And you find a lot of like overworld type of puzzles, so shrines that need like a little side quest to be solved. And in this case, it's like a diving minigame, of which there are 3 in total, I think. And there's some like varieties of this type of puzzle solving of quest. And yeah, sorry, I had to mute myself really briefly because I had a really bad cough, slightly ill. But yeah, as you can see, at one point you'll start using more like the different ancient tech you gather and either build vehicles or like attach a spring to your shield to like jump over stuff. You can commit also the things that you build to memory and not only find blueprint schematics. So you need to have enough zonite, or which is like the material you find at the ground, or the components. I put myself in a bad bill. And yeah. And this is a little clip of just the traversal, like even if you don't have vehicles, like carrying over from the previous game, the way you just reach from one point to another is just so seamless. Like your eyes like go to one point and your brain thinks like, I want to go here. Immediately you start very seamlessly, very dynamically flowing through the traversal, which I really like. And yeah, getting more familiar with what you can do, understanding like how the charges work, like battery icons, before eventually understanding how and where to enhance. So it adds like another Really bad cut today, sorry for that. But yeah, it adds another dynamic to what the stamina wheel also brings to the gameplay table. So I mentioned some minor spoilers in this stream. This is one of them, and this is a moment in the game where we are told that the Master Sword can be collected from this point, but if you don't have enough stamina, you won't be able to take it, which was the case here, first time I encountered this situation. And yeah, this is a new dragon, the light dragon. And like the other dragons, you can also collect shards and fangs and so on. Yeah, what else do we have? So in here, if you're confused, like in the previous game, you can wear these special masks that kind of confuse your enemies into thinking that you're one of them. Yeah, this is still me just like exploring the world and experimenting with the gameplay. I probably spent like 2/3 of the game like exploring most of the world before like going back to the story quests. And so by this point, like, I understand a lot more like the fusion system and try to apply things accordingly. Because before I was just attaching stuff like onto another, like a sword onto a sword, a shield onto a shield. But eventually I understood with the monster parts and stuff. And yeah, so story-wise, there's a lot of things happening all around that is not necessarily related to the main quest. Here in Kakariko Village, like, returning character Paya is now chieftain of the village. And there's some ruins that have fallen from the sky all over the surface, but specifically here also in Kakariko. And new character that is introduced, Tauro, yeah, leader of the survey team. And there's some quests that also like enable you to discover some things, I guess, earlier than intended, which was the case for me. Like, without going too much into it, I think I completed something before I was supposed to complete, but I guess that's just how an open world game design tends to work. And yeah, this is another example of shrine puzzles through the environmental design. This, you have to bring this crystal so you can like activate the shrine. And yeah, at this point I think I explored a lot of like different areas, especially like central Hyrule, Grand Plateau, like underground and depth as well, and skies. A lot of surrounding areas, and here I was starting to feel more like confident in my gameplay strengths and started like taking on stronger enemies and taking on different quests like this one, and that makes I feel like the world so much more lived in. You like to see the people of Hyrule actually reacting to what's going on around them, not only look at landing that's going to evolve as you progress through the story, but also like, for example, specifically you have these monster squads that are kind of spread out through Hyrule, And you can help them like attack a monster camp, which is great. If you're going to play as the hero of Hyrule, like I think it adds a lot to it if you can like fight alongside the people of Hyrule. Yeah. And then at some point I started to understand as well that there are some like advantages in fusing certain stuff with other stuff. So like Zonai tech fused with Zonai weaponry becomes like stronger, for example. And some specific weapons have already like a specific status effect, like the Yige clan blade. It's very good for sneak attacks, so if you add just like a high damage blade to it, it always makes sure that the critical sneak attack is very strong as well. Yeah. Always gets a little bit of compensation, and like these squads, I think they target like 2 different encampments per area, so there's like 3 squads. Yeah. Aside from that, you have also very interesting like treasure hunt quests that really take advantage of like the new expanded cave systems on the surface of Hyrule, and you get some really cool gear, some gear that is from the previous game, but other gear that is also new and very unique. The ascend ability is fantastic. The traversal is so much more instantaneous, I guess. But if it doesn't click in the beginning, like sometimes you forget that you have the ability to ascend. But yeah. Once like you get the habit, it's a time savior. Yeah, the depths have like a lot of verticality to it. They can go like very low as well, and it's very interesting because it kind of works like an upside down like version of Hyrule, where tall mountains on the surface of Hyrule will have like very deep chasms in the depths that have sometimes like these mining sites. Sometimes, actually, I think all towns or settlements in the surface of Hyrule have like an depth underground, like abandoned ruins, which really adds like world building, like almost an anthropological like reason for them to be there where they currently are, which I really appreciate. And yeah, like the depths are so unique, like very eerie, like as if you are very close to the underworld type of thing. Very primal in that type of approach. And yeah, the enemies here are even more dangerous. They usually are like embedded in these like gloom aura, and as you can see in my heart, if you get affected by gloom, like your hearts are broken until you can recover them. So either have gloom resistant food or items, or you can also cook stuff with Sundelions or reach like a light root or the surface to cure that affliction. And yeah, understanding that different materials are going to do different effects, like Lazal tail is going to extend like a whip. Perhaps a thrusting weapon is really good with piercing damage, and like two-handed weapons. Slashing damage is okay, but bludgeoning damage is really good because it means you can destroy like armored enemies faster as well, or mine stuff faster. And yeah, some sneaking action. uh, that I enjoy a lot, because this game really allows you to approach situations in different ways, and it's awesome, like the variety of gameplay styles that you can have in just one game. And the stealth is very good in this game. Like, you can do fantastic stuff, like these purple flowers makes the enemies berserk, and they'll start attacking each other. Also, when it rains, it gives you a huge advantage, just like in the first game, in terms of sound. So you can approach enemies easier from behind. But here, once I'm discovered, I just like go all in, I guess. Get rid of those, go back to sneaking. Usually I think they're like notified with the sound of the ascent if it's close to them. I don't know if this case it was because of the rain or not. But yeah, it's really nice that you can use like the abilities so nicely in traversal like that. And it takes a while, like it's a learning curve, like with the abilities, the constructions, and like all, like sometimes the same button like does 3 different things. But once like it like sinks in, like the fluidity of like gameplay expression is one of the most enjoyable that I've experienced. This one is similar to something we've seen before, but it goes from a skydiving time race to like a snowboarding section, which I found it was awesome. Yeah, exploring depths, building better machines to explore, and yeah, the light routes are very important because it gets very dark in the depths, and this was one situation where like I luckily escaped just in the nick of time. And yeah, so be it by the air, by sea, the traversal in this game is so much more fluid compared to the first game. This one had a very interesting side quest. I was following these trails of like light customs, whatever they're called, and eventually reached an interesting situation here. I really enjoyed this one. I was out of I think I still had bows, but my bow was just destroyed here, and I decided to just get closer to the hostiles. Luckily enough, they were kind of close enough to each other. Throw a shot through it, and because of the effect, they both get hit. And in moments like this, where the game creates like such good memories from gameplay alone. Whimsical like this, using a rocket to uncork Korok seed. And yeah, this game is awesome because it really like manages to balance out between epic and whimsical and majestic and creepy. Awesome experience. And yeah, and just the immersion of the world, like it's very easy to immerse yourself, I find, be it through like the sound design, like the artistic rendition of what they managed to do with the limitations of the graphics engine. For example, like this here, like there's moments where I just stop and immerse myself. Like technically, it's not the best like in the market or in an industry like I've mentioned, but it's just like the minimalistic layering of everything, the sounds, the animations, um, the rendering of it all, the layering of it all. I love it so much. Um, and so yeah, by this point I still didn't start the main quest because I had no reason to, and usually that's a bad thing, but for me it was awesome in this game because I could just really like sink in, dive into the immersion of this world that the developers managed to bring to us before I started to get more invested in the story. Um, this is another variation of some of the shrine quests we've seen before, but in this instance, it's also shows like a light path to where we need to get the MacGuffin. Only this time it's on top of a big construct. Yeah, the variety of the gear is really good, and there's some gear that helps you with skydiving, stuff like that, climbing when it's raining or when the surfaces are slippery. Everything that they've learned from Breath of the Wild, I would say they managed to perfect it until the moment. Like, the weapons were easily lost in Breath of the Wild. Okay, so bring fusion, which make the gimmick of breakable weapons a lot more interesting. Yeah, at this point, a lot more easier to finish these types of adversaries. And yeah, just getting a better grasp of the fusion system, what goes with what. Here I create a little lightning rod, for example. And I still have a shield with a spring. You can attach a rocket to the shield, for example, as well. Or a minecart. A sled to shield surf in the snow. Always got meals ready, especially if you're going exploring. So cold resistance, stamina, and so on. You never know. And yeah, the views from the Sky Islands is just very serene, very majestic. Here I tried to line up with the minimap, the jump, but because I was looking up, it didn't target the trampolines. And yeah, just as I expand further from Hyrule fields, central Hyrule, through the depths and through the skies, I encounter new things like this new enemy. First encounter. They're tough. Just to let you know. Some awesome, unique shrines based on already existing shrines from Breath of the Wild, the Colosseums. Very memorable skydive section of the dungeon. That goes from Sky Islands all the way to the depths. And yeah, this is one of my favorite things about this game. It's just the traversal in terms of verticality and horizontal wise. Like, you can go from all the way from the top, all the way from the bottom, no loading. I find it really impressive. Like, there's some good techniques being used here, I assume, for loading the different areas. But yeah, this is the ultimate, I think, adventure, explorer, game fantasy that I've experienced so far, hands down. Stealth is still very busted. Like, if you have max stealth, like, you can be really close. And yeah, they only notice you like pretty late. And yeah, but it's always so. It always gives me like a very like Ghibli-esque movie vibe every time we ride these deers. I love it. I was kind of surprised when they announced the live-action Zelda project. I would have thought that Nintendo and Ghibli Studios would be like a marriage made in heaven, but who knows what the future holds. But yeah, returning to Lookout Landing frequently and often. A lot of the side quests add up to the world building, like I mentioned, like feeling that the world is lived in. I'm keeping a lot of those like away from the footage because it's really worth like experiencing for yourself. But one of those is here, like there's a school that Zelda founded in between the 5-year gap of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. And there's like side quest or side adventure related to it. In case you haven't played Breath of the Wild, doing this quest is really useful just to get a better understanding of the world building in this iteration of the franchise. Okay, so I mentioned Phantom Ganon before. These creepy hands. This was, I think, one of the first or second time I thought these saw. I was quite nervous still, and I accidentally burned my horse. I think, yeah, it caught fire. But yeah, these fights are so good. Definitely some of my favorite fights in the whole game. Because it really forces you to get the mechanics of the game. Be it the dodge or the parries. At this point I thought like fire had a special like damage towards him, but I'm still not sure if it's just hitting him. Because parrying also reduces the area of the gloom effect, it seems. And yeah, here you can see that bombs to a bow that shoots 3 arrows deals quite a lot of damage, so that's a tip for you, if that was not obvious. Yeah, create updraft, stylish headshots. This felt very nice. This game is so special. And feeling very guilty about harming my horse. Overcompensated with the apples, maybe a little bit. And yeah, more exploration. Remember, verticality more expanded level designs. So visit like ruins that were already on the surface of Hyrule from the previous game. You'll maybe find new stuff here in the Akala Citadel ruins, for example. Some really, really cool gear. Hint, hint. And yeah, cooking. Cooking is one of the funnest side activities I find in this game. But I guess only if you like enjoy like menu gameplay style sections of the game. Some people really dislike that. And yeah, I like that you can just scope a point and mark with a pin. It's very intuitive, very dynamic. You reach a point, see that there are some ancient tech you can use. You can add some of you are carrying yourself. Go to whatever schematics you've committed to memory. This became my go-to vehicle to explore for the majority of the game once I made this. Very good for extended periods of travel. And yeah, you'll reach these points where you can also get all those different devices, Zonai devices. This one felt very satisfying. A gacha game that's actually free, what do you know? But yeah, as you can see, like, I pinned this place in the day, and in game time I arrive at night. Yeah. Stamina is very important. The combination of stamina, gear, every like component of the game like adds up to the gameplay like value. So it really like rewards like exploration, because you will find like always stuff that just keeps like expanding like the fan possibilities of gameplay expression. These types of shrines, for example, like really try to bring it back to the basics, like fusion and building, ultra hand, because your whole equipment is taken away, and so you're forced to use whatever you can find in the dungeon. This was definitely one of my favorite ones, because it introduced to me like these little drones that once they detect enemies, they will lock on to the enemies. And you can attach different stuff to these little tank drones. So yeah, as you can see, these shrines are very similar as well to the shrines that were in the previous game. It's very plausible that Sheikah technology is inspired by Zonai technology. And big recommendation, one of my favorite YouTubers, Monster Maze, does some really cool videos about that kind of like exploring the lore of the game, so check it out if you're interested. Yeah, cannon. What do you think that will do? And yeah, you'll, in case you've played Breath of the Wild, and you'll revisit a lot of places, all the places really from the previous game, and some characters returning, and how their lives have changed in the past 5 years between the two entries. How their communities expand as well. Here there's a side quest. If you photograph like the enemies or the creatures they're looking for, they'll use the photograph as a reference to do like mannequins for like expo on the village. And yeah, this is what I mean as well with how the world feels lived in. Like here in Terrytown, for example, they've seen like the ancient technology that they've uncovered from like the falling ruins from the sky and like digging them up from underground and incorporated into their like society, which is really awesome. The upgrades from Terrytown, from Breath of the Wild to Tears of the Kingdom is really cool to see. This is another one of those shrines, bringing the crystal. And yeah, you can just build like really complex machinery, I guess, but I find that the mechanic is mostly gimmicky, and it serves a function in terms of traversal and other stuff, and other practicalities as well. But it doesn't, like, it's not necessarily like, it doesn't overstay its welcome, I would say. Some people have described it that it's a little jarring, I think, but I really like it, what it brings to the gameplay side of things. And yeah, I kind of went over this, but this area that we've just seen, Link can build like a house, so you can like build the different parts of the house, different sections of the house, right next to Terrytown. And the Akala region is one of my favorite regions in terms of color palette. I find it like very soothing what they managed to do. The design really blends well together. And yeah, this is one of the vehicles you can build. You find blueprint schematics in one of the Giga bases, I believe. So if you always have like the components, you can use the components instead of, or the Zonite devices instead of using Zonite to build it. By now, yeah, here, I know exactly what I want to do, when to do everything. And we still haven't started the main part. Also throw things. This is an important tip that I think a lot of people don't know when they start the game. Instead of using arrows, you can throw stuff, messing up the parry. The weapon is breaking, throw it instead of swinging. Use like everything to your advantage. See a rock, you can do bullet time.
Oh. Hey!
And yeah, this vehicle became my go-to for a lot of horizontal traversal. It's very easy to build. And now there's some variation in terms of Korok quests as well. And there's a lot more side quests. Some that use a very neat environmental design puzzles, bringing back some locations from Breath of the Wild. Oh yeah, some of the sky view towers uh, are inaccessible until you complete like a short quest. This one cannot be opened from outside, so you have to come in down the chimney to activate it. Dandelions are very important. You mix those with whatever you're cooking, it will give you back any hearts you've lost to Bloom if you're exploring the depths. And it's really cool, like the chemistry of the game, how like resources that you find in the Sky Islands can be useful for when you're exploring the depths. Um, and there's always like this dynamic relationship of like resource gathering and management and what type of combinations can result from that for what type of situation, how to solve a problem with different approaches, and just the whole layered cake that is this experience, like sound-wise, visual-wise, gameplay-wise. This game like just ticks a lot of like checks a lot of boxes for me. It's hands down. Maybe this is still like honeymoon phase talk, but for now, I can say this is probably my favorite game of all time. Right, so same fight, different like experience knowledge. Use arrow, 3 arrows with bump right in the center, so I can target all the head. 2 shots, get rid of the head. Because this is a grassland, there's fire, so I have updraft. Take advantage. Bullet time. And if you have enough stamina, of course. So yeah, this game is beautiful because you can definitely feel and witness the better you become with the game itself. As you progress through it, you start like seeing like a noticeable like change in how you play, how you respond dynamically to the game. Special horses, special gear, very majestic gameplay moments. Some of the nicer picture I took. There's a whole like compendium side to it, like very like Pokemon Snap thing to it, if that's your thing. Yeah, using recall from rocks that came from the sky to get a good vantage point to observe your surrounding area, mark pins, towing sonar devices with your horse with the harness, the towing harness. Like the amount of things you can do in this game is just fantastic. You can lose yourself very easily. And like I mentioned, a lot of the places returning players came to know through Breath of the Wild have a whole different like quest line and situations um, that are very worth doing, in my opinion. And by this point in my playthrough, this is when I start finally doing the main quest. All right, still got time. I've gathered like a lot of resources and material. But go back to basics. So I went first to the Ritu village, and this part of like the footage, like it's a lot shorter because I'm trying to avoid like story spoilers. Mostly, there's one that I'll allow myself to show at the very end of the stream. I think it's worth it. There's this, so it's important to know when you kill like the final boss of a temple, in this case the final boss of the Wind Temple, you can find versions of this boss in the underground areas of the depths now and fight them again. And this one is one of my favorite, like the soundtrack, really awesome. Takes a lot of advantage of the new gameplay mechanics they added. And as you can see, you got a little buddy following me around one of the stages. Won't go too much into it, but every time you complete like a different chapter of the main quest, you get the ability to summon the spirit of a sage. And by this point, I had already fought, I think, Leon's but now I'm much more meticulous with what I do during combat. Much more like risky in what I want to experiment as well. And yeah, the sages gave you abilities, like in the case of this one, he like shoots gusts of winds from his wings, so you can traverse very fast the air with your Phallic Rider horizontally for a brief moment. Very useful in terms of traversal. Somewhat useful in terms of combat. And yeah, the overworld mini-bosses of this game are, without a doubt, some of my favorite like gameplay sections from this game and from any game ever. Very epic. Come a long way. So here is the Goron quest. A very fun gameplay section with rail cards. Starts off investigating the volcano. That one I skipped. I thought I had gotten rid of, but yeah, a little teaser. But yeah, go in the depths underground the volcano here in the Goron area, which was pretty epic as well. A lot of like minecart rails exploration type of areas here in the Elden region. So yeah, the side quests feel very varied from region to region, because I think they really take advantage of the game design of where they are placed. They really take advantage of what can you find in that location, right? And what type of challenge does that pose to the player? Yeah, throughout the game, always eyeing up. When will be the moment I will take the sword? And by this point, I don't know if I had already enough stamina or not, but I decided to just grab the sword until I was done with all the story content, until there was just the final showdown. So yeah, at this point I started farming a lot of monster parts for upgrading gear, and through the process just perfecting gameplay, which is a good loop. So you farm for looted, right? So you get better equipment, in the process you get better yourself through the gameplay. This is already on my way to Zora's domain. This little section was pretty awesome. Decided to build like a little squad of turret tank drones. Yeah, technology really is a game changer. As long as you have a fuel source. Or an energy source. Yeah, there's some zero, well, not really zero gravity, it's more like a low gravity area. You can see the blue particles in the air whenever you reach one of those. Those are like just very enjoyable to play through as well. There's a very big one in Zora's domain. So yeah, I avoided showing footage of the main dungeons. This one I just decided to keep. This was a nice moment of gameplay that doesn't reveal too much about the dungeon itself. But similar to Breath of the Wild, like the soundtrack theme of the dungeon layers with every like piece of the puzzle accomplished or yeah, solved. And yeah, so there was here, yeah, I'm accompanied by a companion, and I'm gonna neglect to talk about much. But as I progressed through the main quest, I understood, oh, I already finished that part of the main quest without realizing. It's as if I had finished, let's say, chapter 5 before starting chapter 1 type of thing. And for me, it just kind of blended well with my personal experience, but I can see that perhaps there is a more like narrative, like dramatic structure if you try to follow where the game tries to guide you. Gerudo region is definitely my favorite region of the game. A very clever game design with the sandstorm and like the the sinking sands, bringing back Gyptos, making them resistant to all physical damage, but very weak to elemental damage, and that's the whole like narrative of the Gerudo in this game, which I won't go much to it, but you can see from the screenshot, like using elemental weapons to get rid of the Gypto, the undead enemies. But yeah, I recommend doing the Gerudo region last. My personal recommendation is Rito first, then Goron, then Zora, then Gerudo. Zora and Goron are kind of interchangeable. But yeah, that's my personal recommendation. And this game is... This is why this game took me 300 hours to complete, because I can play this throughout 6 months, and coming back to it, it's like coming back to like a show that is actually interactive. And every new season, there's like different things. It's awesome. Out of all the games that are worth $70 upon release, I think this is the only one that is worth being $70, because what a game. Yeah. Yeah. This point of the game, like in terms of fusions, like I always have fused stuff with the exact specifications that I want. So a shield that uses frost to freeze the enemies, and then a spear with lightning to apply like double the elemental damage. And now with this Sage ability is very, very useful. I would say in terms of usefulness, Sage of Wind, very useful for traversal. Sage of Lightning, very useful for elemental range damage. I guess Fire Sage, good for traversal, good for combat. And Water Sage, mostly combat, only combat. Yes. Yeah. This was my last Sky Tower that I unlocked. This, I was reaching the point where I completed all the regions, I completed all the dungeons. So I'm just finishing up like all the different side adventures, side quests, shrine quests, making sure everything is done before tackling the final section of the game. Collecting star fragments in this game is such a magical thing. Yeah, there's some quests that are very deeply related with like ancient Zonai history and stuff like that. Makes you feel like an archaeologist type of adventurer. It's very neat. I really appreciate that. This was not my final shrine, but it was one of the last ones, and yeah, at least I think this is the memory I'll have for completing the shrines. Very magical moment. It was a very interesting, like, light puzzle. Like, and this is what like amazes me with this game. Like, there's so many different types of callbacks, and it's not just like a gimmicky, like nostalgic thing. It's actually very cleverly put in terms of like game design. decided to also leave these two boss fights against Master Koga, just to show you what it feels like fighting with all your companions. This is something that this game adds as well in comparison to the previous game, is that you can call up companions to help you in traversal and in combat as well, all at the same time, or just you or none of them. You can really select. Yeah, the construct, without revealing too much, it's really cool. You can attach different parts to it as well to help you. And by this point of the game, yeah, it's really cool when you basically reach like the end of your playthrough and the gameplay just speaks to you very naturally. Using the throw stone and just shoot the guy. And yeah, the last tier. I decided to leave this also, but without actually showing the cutscene, because if you haven't played this game, I really recommend it. It's very special. So this is not the final battle. I think main story-wise, this is supposed to be the middle point of the game, but because of how I progressed through the game, like I mentioned, this ended up being a few quests before tackling the final dungeon and everything. So big confrontation against Phantom Ganon, a lot of them, and it's good that you have your allies at this point to help you out. And yeah, after a while, eventually, it has to be done. Eventually, need to say goodbye to the game. And so I was like, yeah. For a very long time, just exploring the game until finally deciding that it was time. Picked up a very epic moment with the Blood Moon as well to grab the Master Sword finally. So yeah, this is it. This is all the footage I have to show from my playthrough. I'm not gonna show the final dungeon nor the final boss, but I have this screenshot from a cutscene from that section of the game that I think is quite nice to finish this stream on. And yeah, like I mentioned before, the story is a lot more in the foreground and there's a lot more cutscenes. But yeah, in the stream I decided to not showcase any cutscenes in case you wanted to experience the game for yourself. Um, so yeah, I have some minor spoilers here, but I think this is a very like decent, comprehensive, like extensive 1 hour and 20 minutes review of what it feels like um, to play through Tears of the Kingdom. What 300 hours feels like into a small compilation without spoiling too much. And yeah, hope you enjoyed this. And I'm thinking of making a part two of this, but it's going to be actually gameplay. I'm going to be fighting some interesting enemies, or maybe exploring some interesting areas before doing the final dungeon and the final boss. So that's the plan. Um, but if not, or in any case, I will try to return to a streaming schedule, um, and probably gonna go back to my bucket list streaming sessions, and I'm gonna start with game control. So until then, have a good one. Wish you but the very best. Highly, highly, strongly recommend playing this game if you have the opportunity. Um, I understand if it's doesn't jive with everyone, but personally speaking, this is now my favorite game of all time, and I think a lot of people might enjoy it as well. All right. Until next time, have a good one.